Reddit user say, AITA for not believing my girlfriend and suspecting she is a homewrecker? My girlfriend and I have been dating for a few months, and we decided to take things seriously, so we finally discussed our past relationships. I was shocked to find out that she dated a single dad before. According to her, he wasn't married, but he lived together with his ex-girlfriend and kid and continued to live with them after he broke up with the mother of his kid. So she started dating a dude that was separated from his ex but still lived with her. Apparently, he moved out shortly after they began dating. She told me that it was a sketchy situation at first, but she was careful, and her ex never lied to her, giving her plenty of proof that he was indeed separated. She told me she didn't regret the relationship because he was a really great guy, but it definitely wasn't her brightest moment involving herself in a complicated situation. To be honest, I don't know if I believe her. I just don't think it's very likely that they were separated. I feel like she probably was the other woman and doesn't want me to know that. She doesn't know that this made me uncomfortable. I just changed subjects and didn't ask more questions. I love her, but I don't feel comfortable with the idea of dating a homewrecker. Should I ask her for proof that she's telling me the truth or just break up now if I feel this uncomfortable? AITA for not believing my girlfriend and suspecting she is a homewrecker? AITA for tricking my sister and ruining her wedding. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. So, I, 32F, have a younger sister, 28F, who has a one-sided competition with me. My parents tend to spoil her. She almost didn't make it when she was born, and she hates that the rest of the extended family don't. 6 years ago, when my husband, then BF, proposed, I knew for a fact that she will do her best to one-up my wedding, and maybe even try to steal it. And I was right. So what I did was choose a random venue, random date, random DJ, photographer, and pretend that they were my dream picks. Then when we announced our engagement, I shared all of those choices with my mom and sister. And surprise surprise, 2 months later, my sister is engaged to her BF, and inviting me to a brunch with her and mom. During said brunch, she said that everything I picked, including the date, is what she has been dreaming of for years. Then she begged me to let her have her dream wedding. I pretended to refuse, and it took my parents talking sense into me for 3 weeks before I agreed. She was married a year later, during fall, and I had my wedding 7 months later, a spring wedding. Fast forward to last weekend, and my husband surprised me with a weekend away, to celebrate 10 years together. I forgot that I told my sister that the reason I chose the fake dream date was that it was our anniversary. Well, saying that she was furious is an understatement. She blew up at me, called me a vindictive bitch, said that she didn't have the wedding she wanted because she had to rush the planning, how the venue was too small for her dream wedding, etc. I let her finish, before reminding her that she said that everything I chose back then was exactly what she was dreaming of, and that I did not put a gun to her head and force her to have the wedding she did. Now she is refusing to be in the same room as me, which makes it hard for family hosting summer get-togethers. My parents say they are disappointed in my manipulations. I don't care, and some family members say that I should just pretend to be sorry for the sake of peace. So AITA? AITA for telling my dad he's not allowed to give his speech at my wedding? My fiancé copyright E and I, both 20s, are getting married in a month and there's a dispute with my dad now and he claims I'm being unfair, but I wanted to get some thoughts on it. So dad decided he was going to give a speech at the wedding without saying anything first. He had shared the contents of said speech with his sister, my aunt, and she knew the speech would not sit well with me and mentioned his plan to me. So in this speech he already wrote he talks a lot about how his wife is the love of his life, how amazing she is, etc. It's very similar to the speech he gave at their vow renewal 10 years ago. He hasn't shied away from expressing in front of me and to me that he never loved anyone like he loved his wife, how all his past relationships pale in comparison. And that includes my mom, who was his first wife, who left him widowed with an 8-year-old son at the time. To make it even more difficult to hear, the vow renewal was held on my 18th birthday and I got to celebrate my birthday by hearing dad talk about how mom meant nothing because his second wife was so much better. They were married 8 years at the time. But a lot of family and friends didn't attend their actual wedding and they decided they'd basically have a second one to celebrate, and they decided my birthday was the perfect time to do this. Anyway, the speech he wrote for my wedding had a lot of this content from what my aunt heard from my dad and read herself. She knew on my wedding day the last thing I needed to hear was how much he adores his wife when he does so in a way that basically said my mom meant nothing to him. I told him I knew about the speech and he didn't have permission to give the speech at my wedding. Dad asked why not and I told him I didn't want him to use my wedding to praise his wife. He said she means the world to us, so why would I say that? I told him she means the world to him. But she pales in comparison to my mom, who meant the world to me and still does. I told him he might have decided mom meant nothing, but that didn't mean I shared his feelings. He accused me of being sensitive and then said it seemed like I didn't care about his wife at all, and then he said she was a good mom to me for the 8 years she raised me. I told him she was never anything more than his wife. My mom died when I was 8 and I didn't get a new one. And the last thing I need to hear is how little she meant on my wedding day. Dad told me to be reasonable and the parents of the bride and groom typically say something. I told him nothing he had to say had a place at my wedding. That this is mine and my fiancé copyrightee's wedding, not his. I told him to get married again if all he wants to do is praise his wife. But it was not happening at mine. He told me to stop acting like a little boy and grow up. I left. Then his wife called crying about the fight Dad and I had. Which led to Dad calling me again and telling me to grow up again. AITA? Found out my wife was cheating during a girls' trip by discovering a secret box in our closet. Now I'm lost and need advice. My wife Paula and I have been married for 10 years. We've had our ups and downs, but I always thought we were solid. I guess you never really know someone, do you? So, last weekend, my wife went on a girls' trip with her friends. She's done this a few times before, and I've never thought much of it. She needs her space, and I trust her, or at least I did. While she was away, I decided to do a deep clean of the house. She loves coming back to a clean home, and I figured it was a nice gesture. I started with our bedroom and eventually made my way to her side of the closet. That's where things took a turn. Hidden behind her winter coats was a small, locked box. Curiosity got the better of me. I found a spare key, I remembered it from when we moved in, and opened it. Inside were letters, photographs, and a burner phone. My heart sank. The letters were love notes, but not from me. They were from someone named A. The photos were of my wife and this guy, looking very cozy. And the phone? It was full of texts between her and A. I read enough to know that this had been going on for at least 6 months. They'd been meeting up while I was at work, during her girls' trips, and who knows when else. I felt sick. Betrayed. Angry. All the emotions you can imagine. I put everything back exactly as I found it and closed the box. Then, I sat down and tried to think. What the hell was I going to do? When she came back from her trip, I pretended everything was normal. I needed time to process and figure out my next move. But keeping it all in was driving me insane. Every time she smiled at me, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Yesterday, I finally broke. I confronted her after dinner. I told her I'd found the box and knew about A. She didn't deny it. Instead, she started crying and apologized, saying she never meant to hurt me and that it just happened. She's staying with a friend now, and I'm sitting here in our empty house, trying to make sense of it all. Part of me wants to forgive her, but another part is screaming that I'll never be able to trust her again. So, what do I do? Has anyone else been in a similar situation? How did you handle it? Can a marriage survive something like this, or is it time to move on? I outed my girlfriend for sleeping with my boss, and now no company will hire her. In my design team there is only one girl. When I met her she was very extroverted and flirty with everyone, but I didn't know anything else. I invited her out on a fancy dinner date and there wasn't that much chemistry, but after a few dates she seemed to open up to me emotionally and told me she liked spending time with me. We kept dating without anything sexual, but we became boyfriend and girlfriend and very attached to each other. We did eventually have sex even though she is only sometimes in the mood and I enjoy her company a lot. Fast forward a few weeks, and I found out from a coworker that she is sleeping with him too. They are not boyfriend and girlfriend though, and she told me it was just for casual sex and they don't have the emotional connection that we have. I eventually forgave her and we decided to find a compromise where she can sleep with other guys and I can sleep with other girls if I ever find someone who was interested in the same thing. I don't really have chemistry with any other girls because I'm not good with women, but I think it is nice to know she would support me if it ever happened. Eventually, I found out she has been sleeping with other team members, not all, but what was most shocking is she has slept with my boss a couple times. I felt a bit uncomfortable knowing he might sabotage my career or something if he ever catches feelings for her. I discussed this with her and she said our boss is very generous and he has given her a promotion in the past, and that she has said good things about me so that the boss gives me good ratings too. I haven't gotten harsh ratings on my code so far, so maybe she's right. She said her relationship with our boss is complicated as she has some feelings for him, she likes authority figures, but those feelings are only of admiration and intense sexual attraction, but he is emotionally unavailable anyway as he is married, so she doesn't see any future with him other than sex and work. I knew this should have made me feel safer in the relationship, but I still felt a bit nervous about it. I thought I was an ass for being uncomfortable with it. I really loved her and I would not want to leave her. Especially after I had invested all this time together and she lived in my apartment for a few months already. She sometimes cooked for me, but we mostly ate out. She never brought a guy home while I was there, so I thought she respected my boundaries. But then, it happened, our boss and my girlfriend once had an encounter with his wife, where his wife was a bit jealous and almost got violent with my girlfriend, but in the end somehow they talked it out and ended up all sleeping together. I was quite progressive and open, so I think people should be able to sleep with whoever they want as long as there's mutual attraction, but things started to get way too far. When we agreed to be allowed to see other people, we both understood that there was no emotional connection allowed. But after having the threesome, my girlfriend started neglecting me. At work and at home. After everything that I had done for her, and everything I had sacrificed for our relationship, she basically left me to dry. Because the wife was okay with it now, my boss became more emotionally available and so she didn't really need me anymore. She risked my career, and cheated on me, so I knew I had to do something about it. I knew I had to be sneaky, so I could not just have my phone out, but I needed to record her admitting to sleeping with the boss. So I did some searching and found an app called Reclip that let me clip audio after the fact, so I did not need to have my phone obviously recording. She stopped answering my calls and texts, but we still worked together, so I talked to her in person at work. We were still technically dating. I asked her to meet me in the break room for a few minutes to talk. During our conversation I asked her if she was in love with our boss, and she took the bait. She went on a whole tangent about how it started off as just meaningless sex, but then evolved. She exposed herself without me even needing to force it out of her. With my recording in hand I left to my desk, and promptly sent it out to every hiring manager, and HR person I could find the email of. This led to utter chaos. Everyone was talking about their scandal. My boss and GF both got fired. Great part was that after everything subsided no one would hire her because the hiring managers got the word out that she was bad news. AITA for refusing to help my best friend pay for university after getting a large scholarship? I'm a prospective university student, 18F, and I've been incredibly fortunate to receive a substantial scholarship that covers most of my tuition. This scholarship is the result of years of hard work, countless extracurricular activities, and maintaining top grades. My best friend, who has always struggled more academically, wasn't as lucky. Despite his best efforts, he didn't get any significant scholarships and is facing a daunting financial burden to attend university. Recently, he approached me with a desperate plea. He asked if I could use some of my scholarship money to help him pay for his tuition. He argued that since I have a lot of my expenses covered, I could afford to spare some of the money to support him. He promised to pay me back after graduation once he secures a job. I was shocked and explained that the scholarship money is strictly allocated for my education, and even if it wasn't, I couldn't risk my financial stability on a promise. Even though my fees are covered, I still need to work/find other ways to cover living costs and what the scholarship hasn't covered. Since then, my friend has been distant and resentful, accusing me of abandoning him when he needs help the most. He thinks I am selfish for not sharing my good fortune, and most of our mutual friends have sided with him, saying that I could afford to help. Now, I feel torn between my commitment to my own future and the guilt of not helping my best friend. AITA? Another user says, Hello everyone, I recently moved with my parents and they were in a very troubled phase in their relationship. I was always very attached to my father and the possibility of them separating forever was really scaring me. The truth is that I already knew the reason and it involved betrayal on the part of my father. Looking through some of his messages I could actually see that he was talking to other women and arranging things with them. That filled me with anger inside and at the same time it terrified me to think about the possibility of separation and me being away from him. I always acted like a tough guy but inside I was sad and ended up developing anxiety and even had physical symptoms. Well, they really decided to separate, for the second time actually, and my father went to live with my brother in our old house. They two didn't get along well but they made it work. In the meantime I was practically begging for my father's love and attention and most of the time he didn't respond to me or help me when I needed it. It was very difficult because I love him and seeing that he was choosing to stay away hurt a lot. The problems between him and my mother worsened when he was slow to respond or help me financially. For me the peak was when I went to visit my family in the state where I lived. My mother went too, and amazingly, he still barely saw me even though he hadn't spoken to me for almost a year. I tried not to call and my brother said for me to ignore this situation. So simply and out of nowhere he decides to move to another state without even informing my brother. He simply took his things and said he would move with one of his nephews, who even encouraged him to cheat on my mother. I was in the apartment from my aunt this day and he came like a sorry dog sending me text messages to go and say goodbye to him. He was at the building's entrance. I simply said I wouldn't go because I had a cold and it was very cold. It was winter. He started complaining and called me insisting that I come down there. I hung up the phone and didn't go to say goodbye but that didn't even soften his heart. Seriously, I don't know what happened to this man, he wasn't like that. Anyway, I was judged for my family for not going to say goodbye. But then I'm the asshole?